Hello and welcome to the Strawbyte Workshop, and this is my first live stream. I'm just checking myself down here, making sure everything's okay. So unfortunately, just got the top of my head missing. So I'm a tall chap. There we go. Okay, so if you're in the live chat, if you would like to pop a message up, then I can see that you're there and waiting. Okay, so this is my first live stream. It's kind of new. I'm hoping that the audio comes across okay. I've had difficulties with microphones all day in the practices, and I've had to order another cable. And as quick as Amazon is, it wasn't going to get here this afternoon. So I'm afraid we're stuck with the microphone on my smartphone, and we'll just have to see how that works out through the live stream. So I'd like to thank everybody for joining me. And if you're looking at this video after the live stream, then well, thanks for dropping by. You'll miss the opportunity to contribute to the comments, but with luck, you'll be able to see the comments alongside the live stream itself on the playback feature on YouTube. I'd also like to thank my Patreons for their continued support. They haven't seen a great deal from me over the last couple of months, and we'll talk about that a little bit, I'm sure, in the next 30 minutes or so. But their contribution is invaluable. And if you want to join them on Patreon, then please do so. You can get to my Patreon page through patreon.com/Strawbyte Workshop. The more the merrier, as Peter Millard might say. It's a bit of a Patreon party going on over there. But if you're new to the channel, if you're watching this live stream for the very first time and you haven't subscribed, then please do so and click the bell icon to be notified of things that are coming up. Okay, so as the next 30 minutes or so, maybe, if we can keep it going that long, carries on, then I'll try and get around to as many questions as I possibly can. I've got some things here that would be useful to talk about. There's been quite a lot of changes in the workshop. You'll have seen recently a video from me talking about the new workshop door, which I have to say is probably one of my favorite videos, because the thing that it covers has been so useful from a sort of usability point of view. And it's also allowed me to get the workshop more or less finished in terms of what I set out to do starting last summer, in terms of putting the insulation in and just making this a sort of usable space that feels more like a workshop and less like a garage attached or detached from a newly built house in the middle of a building site in Northamptonshire. So but yes, so it's looking quite nice, and I think, you know, I've tried to make it look attractive when I'm filming. So we've got the boxes behind that display my tools. You can't really see it, but I have some professional lighting permanently up now, and there's a big light behind the camera illuminating me, so that it makes filming much easier. And all of these things are suspended from the ceiling, and so they're off the floor, which means that I'm not just crashing into things every time I move around. There are still some things that need to be sorted out. I'm stuck with very limited power generally, in the workshop. I have power in a couple of locations where I can run trailing leads to tools. I'm still very much stuck with mostly taking the power from my Nilfisk my Nilfisk vacuum cleaner for pretty much all of the bench tools, things like my domino and my sanders and so on and so forth. What I really need is, just a plethora of sockets all around the walls, and it would allow me to sort of leave things on charge whilst I'm working. Anyway, the electrician hopefully will be coming sometime this year if this lockdown ever eases up. So, in terms of the situation as of today, Sunday the 10th of May, obviously we're still in the middle of lockdown in the UK. It's led to some plans in the workshop being curtailed, and frankly, I think the biggest problem that I've had is really getting hold of materials. I bought 2 sheets of ply from B&Q a couple of weeks ago, and I'm sort of making do with that. I'm very conscious that what I do is, I don't make a living from the workshop, so very conscious of the fact that, the materials that are available in builders merchants and DIY stores probably ought to be going to people that really need it. So I've kind of kept things under control. I think putting the door in and getting that finished, I had the materials for that. A few other projects, like I've been building some clamp racks over the last couple of weeks. That's really just using offcuts from my wood storage cart. And I've got plans to make a new CNC table behind as well. So, right, let's just pause there. I want to see what's happening in the live chat for the moment. So, hi to Chewy and to Luke K, David Atkins. We've got Claire from Making It Out of the Woods. Good day to you too. And A Darfa, I think. And I can also see that the video quality is not fantastic on the live stream, so apologies for that. I hope the audio is much better, and let me know on the chat if it's not. Let me just check one moment, and I just want to check a setting on the camera. Right, leaves you looking at a blank thing. Okay. Audio mostly okay, thank you, Claire. Right. Visuals much better. Graham Smith, hi Graham, that's better. Excellent. Right, so the purpose of this really was, I suppose, for you guys to ask me anything. And I kind of mean anything. It doesn't mean I have to actually answer the question, and try and keep it clean as well. But I had some great questions in advance that I'd like to cover. And the first is from Keith Brown. Keith, as you know, is all things reclamation, I guess, really, from Rag and Bone Brown. He's asked me some quite challenging questions here, really. So the first one is there anything I would do differently when you consider all the changes you've made in the workshop and insulating? Okay, so yeah, I think probably the thing that I would change is the order of some of the work. I prioritized getting the insulation in during the summer last year, and what I perhaps should have done is maybe prioritize putting the door in. That has been much more useful, and I think would have solved a lot of problems along the way, and also would have meant that the insulation project could have been done in one go. So So that's the first thing, I think, really. The other thing is that we've got plans to make use of the space behind the workshop. So it's behind this wall here, behind me, for storage. Now, having kind of used every inch of the space within the workshop for the stuff that I have, hindsight again, I think, would have me perhaps look at doing that storage project outside. I think one of the challenges that I've had is trying to find places for everything that's kind of in the way whilst I've been kind of building out the workshop. So things like a ladder and other tools. Oh, Handy Jim is saying Chewy, make your workshop longer. Okay. Right. So yeah, so I think perhaps if we'd have started behind the workshop and got that storage, then the whole process of actually putting things together would have been a bit better. Video's a bit grainy again. Apologise for that. Right. The other question you had was if you could get any tool, money no object, what would it be? So the trouble is, I think, I've collected tools over the last maybe 4 or 5 years, really, with a kind of dream workshop in mind. So I have a half decent bandsaw. It's a bit small, but it works. I have my DeWalt chop saw. I've had various table saws, and we'll come on to that in a mo. So I think I've kind of got everything that I need. But one of the earliest purchases I made, and it was through a contact at work, was my drill press. And I use that a fair amount. But one of the things that is a real pain is having to change the belts on the top to get the various speeds you need for different types of drilling. And basically, I think some of the more modern drill presses like the Nova Voyager would be perhaps the sort of next sort of dream tool, I suppose, if money was no object. But as we all have limited budgets, I haven't really got the thick end of £1,000 to spend, and I don't think I need the capacity of a bigger drill press. So we'll we'll just have to muddle along as we are. My last really big kind of dream purchase was buying the Festal domino for my birthday last year. It's my 50th birthday. I thought I deserved the treat, and I've used it loads. And in fact, actually, the door frame was made with domino joinery, and it made the job so much quicker. And I was really limited in terms of time, and really. Cutting those tenons by hand would have taken probably, I don't know, a couple of hours, and it was great to really set the job up and within 15 minutes cut all the domino mortises, and to really then have the cabinet, the door frame then kind of assembled and ready to go. The drill press, the miter saw stand that I made was probably the first big project I made with the dominoes, and I was really pleased with how quickly the whole thing came together when it came to the glue up. Right, let's have a look at the live stream comments. So Chewy, make your workshop longer, and he's come and said, I should have typed, you can make your workshop longer incorporating the storage. Yes, well, that's probably where I was going to with that kind of tale earlier. I think we'd have put the storage behind the workshop, then I could have found some way of incorporating it, maybe through a small door at the back or something, perhaps, but that's that time's past. I've really got all of the space allocated, and I don't really fancy cutting a doorway in my nicely insulated and plasterboarded wall. So Making Out of the Woods asks, what I will be predominantly making now. Okay, so that's a really interesting question. Given the fact that I've spent so long setting the workshop up, I'm sort of running out of workshop projects to do. What I am focusing on in the next few months, really, I think, is to get the cabinets made for the workshop. There are 2 large cabinets to go under the bench tops that I have, a new drill press cabinet, and some smaller floor cabinets, really, so that essentially there's a run of cabinets with storage underneath along this wall, and then that leaves this wall free of floor-based storage. And I bought some really cheap melamine carcassed cabinets for the wall, and I'd love to change them and to make that sort of a little bit more useful. Shelves are fine. I quite like and open shelves as well without doors, but it does look a bit cluttered, and I'm not the best at trying to keep it tidy either, so things just get thrown up there and it takes a little while to sort out. So some better wall storage. I think really for me, all of these projects in the workshop are really kind of there to try and hone my skills. I'd like to make furniture for the house if I can, but I'm a man of taste now, to be honest, and I don't want any old rubbish. And I'm my own worst critic as well. So I think the workshop projects I've got coming up in the next couple of months really are going to hopefully raise the bar in terms of what I can produce and the standards that I can achieve. And then I'll take some of that into the house, where I have a bathroom, the ensuite of our master bedroom. That needs to be fully fitted out with cabinets and shelving and other storage there. And then maybe we'll find some other projects in the spare room, which is where I've got the 3D printers set up and was originally designated as sort of like a home office. And really it's a sort of 3D printing dumping ground at the moment. So that's what I've got. Longer term, really, I make and sell the Trachsel guides. I've got some that I can show you quickly. No, not out. So I make and sell those, and I'm really quite inspired by other makers on YouTube, in particular Matt Smith from the Badger Workshop and Keith Brown from Rag and Bone Brown. They seem to be focusing some of their attention on, well, Matt in particular, I think he's really geared up towards making stuff and selling it online, and I'd like to do a little bit more of that. I'm a little bit unsure as to where to start, as I don't really want to have to install anything, and I certainly don't particularly want to have to deal with customers face to face at this stage. I'd rather make something, put it on Etsy perhaps and sell it. So maybe that's the next thing for me. Okay, so back to the comments. Oh, so Russell Smith is joined. Hello, Russell. Yes, we're all a big fan of the Badger Workshop. Something happened last year. It's something I've not really talked about a great deal when I did the review of the Milwaukee table saw, but the saw that I did the review of at the end of last year was actually one that I bought from Matt Smith, Badger Workshop. I'd seen his review video and kind of fell in love with the idea of something that was a little bit more portable, and I was rather impressed by the battery life. I saw one on eBay, bidded for it, was successful, and it turns out that it was the machine that Matt reviewed. So I've had the good fortune of actually seeing the Badger Workshop firsthand, and that was probably one of my highlights of last year. So yeah, so there we go. Right, any more questions? Okay, if you do have any more questions, put them in there. Otherwise, I'm going to have to revert to the list. And I've got some that have actually been asked by genuine people. But full disclosure, I've made some of these questions up in case there wasn't any in the live stream. So, why did Chewy asks, why did I go for the CNC? So my job for the last 30 or more years has really focused on, and I've tinkered with computers since I was like 10 or 12, and the idea of connecting a big heavy duty router to a machine controlled by a computer and then making something with it has kind of appealed for quite some time. My son now is 25, but in his sort of 18th year between high school, his sixth form, and university, he spent the summer building out of drawers and MDF a CNC. I helped him with that project. It was a Gerbil-based machine with a sort of custom board that he designed and built, and it was a bit rough, but it did at least carve something out. It wasn't terribly accurate, but so he's had one on his kind of to-do list. He's had one for quite some time that he made himself. He's recently bought a Chinese 150mm CNC a few years back, and I could just see the use of CNC in the workshop. You've seen a video of me making signs. I made this push stick on it. It's not a terribly complicated shape, and trust me, you can do this on the bandsaw in half the time it took me to set the job up and to get it to run. But I've been following some videos online through the SketchUp YouTube channel, and one of them was talking about digital fabrication and how this particular designer called Eric designs in SketchUp all of the component parts and all of the holes and pockets that he needs to fit cabinets together. And with that in mind, I've just been playing around with a little bit of digital fabrication, because whilst the machine is cutting something out, I can be doing something else. So I do think it feels like having a sort of robotic employee in the workshop. Do I regret the spend? No, I don't think I do. The thing that I've learned very quickly about the CNC is that it's a bit of a money pit. Once you get going with it, and once you start to be competent and you know what you're doing, then from the base kit, you'll want to make some changes that will essentially make your carving more accurate. And so I've kind of probably spent a couple of £100 over and above the initial cost of the CNC, and I've got a few things in mind that will just help me design and carve more efficiently, that will probably cost a couple of £100 more, but we'll see where we go. One of the things that's interesting, I think, is the fact that CNC has rather taken on life of its own in the UK maker community, and Peter Millard has a Workbee CNC from Ooze Nest that he's built and covered on his channel, and we've been in touch, and we'll probably be doing some sort of comparison video, I think, at some point in the future over that. Other makers like Paul Cunningham seem to be doing really well in terms of monetizing their CNC, and I think really it's kind of the new tool in the shop for many, and you know, I'm just excited to be in the same game, really, to be honest, and learning and making with mine. Russell asks, how's the new door holding out? Okay, so good question. The new door, it's fine. It's a bit drafty, and that's mostly because I chose the wrong hinges when I first installed it. I went with some fire door hinges, but they weren't rated correctly for the weight of the door. So with it being so nice and me having the door open these last few weeks, the door has sagged a little bit. It catches along the bottom and doesn't fit square in the frame anymore. So there's a gap at the top. But I have new hinges. I have some super fat hinges to fit. There are 2 pairs. There'll be 4 hinges in total. Remember, it's a stable door, so the top leaf and the bottom leaf are independent of each other. So they will be going on when the weather improves. Suddenly it's got very wet and windy here in the UK. We've had a lovely couple of weeks. but maybe in sort of June time, I'll I will get round to refitting the door. So that's something on the to-do list. But otherwise, and I think the key benefit for the door is the usefulness of it, right? You know, the fact that I can get in from the garden rather than having to go through the big up and over door is a huge advantage, and it also means that I can store things in front of the door. That big up and over door, I don't want to get rid of because I think it will be useful if we ever move and this stuff has to get out in a hurry. There is a step of about, I don't know, 25 centimeters to step over to get in through the personnel door. So the big door has to remain, but I can stick stuff in front of it, and in the last weeks I've not had to move any of that really to get in or out of the workshop via that way. So it's all looking good. All right, so back to the questions. All right, so Tusha loves the channel. Thank you very much. I love the channel too. Actually, I watch most of my videos again, actually, just to remember what I did last year. So, so she has the same style garage as me and wants to know whether insulating, like I've done, is a good idea. So I would say yes. Look, if you've got a space and you're going to spend a lot of time in it, really, you need it to be as comfortable as possible all year round. In the UK, we have kind of warmish to hot summers where the space needs to be cool, and in the winter it can be sort of perishing cold, maybe not below freezing for many nights or days of the year, but certainly with the wet weather, you know, the sort of damp air really does sort of chill you to the bone. So having insulated the workshop, actually, and even though I hadn't completed all of the walls and there were bits missing, and you know, maybe it wasn't as entirely weatherproof at the end of last summer as I would have needed, there was a huge difference in terms of the use of the space. I have a small portable heater. It needed to be on for perhaps 15 minutes to get the temperature up to about 10 or 12 degrees, and it would stay that temperature for a good couple of hours. So it made being in the space much more enjoyable. And I suppose, so you're talking about a garage gym, weights, etc. and so, you know, obviously that's something you were going to enjoy spending time doing, and having a space which feels a bit warmer when you're in it, and a space that isn't going to get damp. And that's the other big difference. The insulation really sort of keeps the wet outside and keeps the space inside damp. I have a dehumidifier which I turn on during the winter months, but to be perfectly honest, really, the previous winter it would suck moisture out the air at the rate of, you know, a couple of litres every half day. Last winter it would run, and you know, I would get a dribble out of the dehumidifier's hose, and inside I haven't had anything like the problem with tools or surface rust or anything along those lines. So it has made a big difference, and I would recommend it. It doesn't have to be an expensive project either. I think I covered the costs. I didn't really spend more than a few £100 insulating the space. It's been a year on, and pretty much it's held up. There's nothing really that needs to be repaired. I'll be covering in a video 1 or 2 spots that are going to, I'll show you the problem in the video, but fundamentally moisture wicks up through the ground to the damp proof course, and I have a piece of MDF that was inadvertently touching one of the wet bricks below the damp proof course, and that's just had some discoloration, so we'll be replacing that in a video coming up. But there's been really no maintenance to do with the insulation. I think it's going to be good for a few years, and if you're investing into a space that you're going to use frequently, then I would say yes, go for it. Chewy asks, do I still get nervous behind the camera? Well, under normal circumstances, I can edit out all of my nervous habits, and I can have probably 5 or 6 goes at getting it right before I'm happy with it. I'm a little bit nervous doing a live stream because you're all out there and you're all watching, and I can see that the picture's a bit grainy and maybe the sound isn't optimal. today either. But you know, I can't see you. You're not in the room with me. So what's the worst that's going to happen, right? You're going to leave a odd comment, maybe. But anyway, no, not as much. But to be honest, actually, thinking when I first started the channel, I was really self-conscious. I really did think that people that watch my videos would think I'm some sort of idiot, or sort of kind of that school mentality. You sort of stick your neck out and you do something different that has you stand out from the crowd, and you think you're going to get sort of picked on by the school bully, or made fun of in assembly, or that sort of thing. So but actually what I found is that everybody has been so nice. I mean, I've bumped into people that I work with. One guy came up to me in the canteen in the office. Hey, look, I was on Google the other day looking to buy a circular saw, and your face came up along with a review of a circular saw. I thought it was a great video, and it wasn't really the comment I was expecting, perhaps. And so everybody's really been quite kind. So it's not a question of nerves now. I think for me, sometimes I feel impatient, and I sometimes spend time out here, a good couple of hours, and spare time is a bit precious too. And I'll make some video, or I'll make something and it doesn't go right, and I'm becoming my own worst critic. And what seems to get in the way at the moment is really a little bit of fear that I'll put something out that won't be as appreciated as some of the successes I've had in the past. But of course, perhaps there's a little bit of wrong-headedness there. I'm thinking about those successes with hindsight, right? When I was making them, I was probably in just the same state as I was editing the video, and looking at it and thinking, oh, is this going to be good enough? Okay, right, let's see what everybody thinks and stick it up there. So maybe not so nervous these days, but mindful, I think, as I've got more followers on both Instagram and subscribers on YouTube, that I want to be producing content that you guys appreciate. And so I feel a little bit of pressure, but I find the best videos for me are the ones that either are done quickly, or the ones where I do them over a long period of time, so I feel a lot more relaxed when I've got all the footage together and I start editing. So that's that. Russell asks what my day job is. Right, okay, so that's not something I've ever mentioned, I don't think, on a video. I may have hinted at it before. So I'm not going to say the firm, but I work as a risk manager for a very large retail bank here in the UK. I say retail bank. The bank not just services ordinary customers with checkbooks and debit cards and that sort of thing, but also business customers. I'm one of the lucky few that can continue to work from home. But I'm also, perhaps on the flip side of that, really quite in demand at the moment, as the finance industry in the UK is doing its level best to try and support businesses and people who might be in financial difficulty. So there are sources of help if you're struggling. That's all I'm going to say. That's the day job hat taken off. And so I would, so that's what I do. I work as a risk manager in a bank, and I kind of do this for fun. But this is not really my journey starts or ends, really, to be honest. I never really intended to work for a bank at all. Growing up, my dad was a carpenter and joiner, and for many years, when I was in my teens, I would help him out. Not so much on site, but I was always interested in what he was doing and building in the garage, in particular stuff that was for private customers. We'd go out to their houses. But maybe from an early age, my heart was set on IT and computers, really. That was kind of the new thing. Making things with your hands, in particular nailing things together with bits of wood, really didn't seem like a skill or a craft at all to me, in my eyes, in my teens. So I kind of focused on IT and then went down that route. And I've worked for all sorts of firms in that space, from police forces and ambulance services, to a large US industrial giant, McDonnell Douglas. They're no longer with us anymore as a company. They're now Boeing, and they sold their IT business in the UK anyway, but that's where I started. So as a career, I started off as a qualified electronics and electrical engineer, which means I know something about electrics, and but I know enough to get the professionals in, as we all should. Okay. It's a difficult time. Thanks for sharing. It is a difficult time. There are so many people in various states of work or non-work or furloughed, and it's a very troubling time, I know. And I've certainly enjoyed a lot of the content on YouTube. It's kind of a helpful distraction, and many of my videos have picked up an awful lot of new views and subscribers, and mostly from the UK, it would appear. So yeah, I kind of do this for your entertainment and for fun and to keep me sane when I'm not working, and it really is a very enjoyable thing to do. Okay, stay safe everyone. Yes, absolutely. Right, so Paint and Wood UK from Instagram asked me a question. What's my favourite pub lunch? Right, so this is a kind of hard question really, because amongst all of my friends and people that know me well, pudding probably is, and desserts, and going out and having a cream tea somewhere historic like a National Trust property probably is what I'm better known for, as well as running a successful blog for many years called Carl Pountney's Biscuit of the Week on Facebook, which was incredibly popular for a while. So biscuits and sweet treats probably are what people know me for. But to answer the question, because that's a good question and deserves a worthy answer, I probably think actually one that I can walk to. I live in a town called Towcester, which is in Northamptonshire, Towcester, if you're from out of town. And we have a pub down the road called The Folly that does quite a nice Sunday lunch. That's quite nice. And there are some places in town. 385 I think is one of the restaurants I quite like. Nearby Brackley there's a place called the Green Room. It's not really a pub, it's sort of a wine bar, but that's a nice lunch there, especially on a weekday. It's also a decent place for breakfast too. And then I used to work in London, and some of my favourite places to eat actually are in London, and I worked in Hammersmith for many years, and there's a place called, I've written it down here, where's it gone? The Rutland Arms in Hammersmith. It's on the Thames. Interestingly, if you're in the UK and you've ever watched a TV series called New Tricks, it's the pub that appears in that show is right on the Thames, and that was about 400 yards from my office, so that was quite nice. Same area. I would say that Stonemason's Arms in Hammersmith is pretty good for a decent lunch, and Villaggio's if you like it Italian. Elsewhere, the Perch in Oxford, there's a nice lunch to be had there, and the Grace Western Arms in Aynhoe, which is kind of between where I live in South Northamptonshire and the Cotswolds. It's kind of like halfway, so you know, if you're on your way back from somewhere nice like Bourton-on-the-Water and you're a bit peckish mid-afternoon on a Sunday, then I can recommend that place as well. So I hope that's answered your question. I remember pubs and restaurants, those were the days. Absolutely. Yes, we'll probably be old and retired before we perhaps get to eat in a busy restaurant again. Yeah, long may though. Let's hope those days return soon. Obviously without any risk of people catching this awful virus thing. So let's have another look for questions. Kev from Epsom. Epsom is a lovely place. There's obviously the Epsom Derby, which it's well known for. Less well known is a place called Worcester Park and Stoneleigh, and my nan used to live in Ardrossan Gardens, halfway between Worcester Park, or the Cattle Bridge in Worcester Park, and Stoneleigh Station. So Epsom is a place that I know quite well, along with other places like Nonsuch Park and Surbiton, and you know, heading towards the Thames, Kingston and Richmond Park. So thank you, Kev, for reminding me of all of that. Okay, so some other questions that were asked. I don't have the names of the people that asked this. So if you're on the live stream and you ask these questions, please let me know. Oh, it's Mr. Handicraft. Hello, Leo. Hello. What making project out of everything you've created has given you the greatest sense of pride? Good question. I would say, actually, I think actually it's the door. It's the door. And I'll tell you for why. Sadly, last year my father passed away, and you know, as I said earlier, he was a joiner and cabinet maker his entire life, and I hadn't realised perhaps how big an influence he'd been until I came to tackle this job. Originally, I was going to buy the frame and have it custom made to fit the door. That proved too expensive, and I'd helped my dad as a teenager make a door frame in the garage at home. I mean, he did all the work. I just watched, and I don't know, something in me sort of said that you could do the job and make the frame yourself. I still got a builder in to help me with the project, but that's because I kind of needed an extra pair of hands, and quite frankly, didn't really want to be trapped underneath a collapsed wall. So somebody with some experience over and above mine would have been advantageous. Somebody to blame, maybe. No, not really. So the door, the fact that it's finished, all of the walls are decorated. This is a lovely space. It's far nicer than the garage workshop my dad had. I think all of that together kind of fills me with kind of pride, and I'm pretty certain my dad would be really proud of this and what I've achieved. And in fact, actually, in the September before he died, he came to the new house with my mum. He was very frail. It was kind of a touch and go day. We didn't know whether he was going to be well enough to travel. But anyway, we got him here. We took him to the garage and opened it up. I've made a pretty decent job of tidying it up, so he wasn't going to be disappointed there. And I just showed him one or two things that I'd made around the workshop. And I think he was really pleased that, you know, I was doing it with a degree of competency. And I think he sort of was very keen to point out the fact that, you know, the attention to detail in some of the work that I was showing him was, you know, far beyond what he was not capable of. But, you know, he worked as a commercial joiner. He never had the time that I did to finish projects in maybe the way that I've done. So that was quite a nice moment as well. But the door, because I think in the door is everything that I learned from my dad. There we go. Nick asks how the CNC is going. Yes, it's great. I'm really loath to spend too much time talking about the CNC in project videos. The two videos that I have done on the CNC probably haven't done as well as some of the more interesting things that I've done, like the mitre stand worktop and a couple of the other projects I did at the end of last. But it's working really well. I've said earlier that I was going to perhaps pick up with Peter Millard and see if we could do something together, so we can compare my Inventables X carve to the work bee from Ooze Nest. But no, it's going really well. Malcolm Coward. Hello, Malcolm. Greetings to you. Seems to have missed any vid on your pillar installations. Anything on that? Yes, well, so Malcolm is one of my patrons, and he's correctly pointing out the fact that in an update I gave to them a couple of weeks ago, I mentioned that I was planning to put out a video on Friday, this Friday just gone, that was going to be looking at the insulation panels. So the insulation panels are these things here. This one here is supporting my TV and my laptop stand. I have another one with my drill station and my charging station, and a blue one here which is going to be the place for all of my clamps. Now I've edited as much of that video together, but I needed to really sort of tidy up this corner of the workshop so I could get a better shot of this particular. This is the one that I filmed, and it's the one that was finished first. The blue one, it's off camera. I'm pointing to it, but you can't see it. And I didn't get round to doing that. I spent most of the free time I had during last week really just tidying up and getting the place looking tidy. So that's coming, and I may well get a chance to do that tomorrow, as I have a day off, and I might be able to get the editing finished on that. So that's still to come. It won't be a Friday thing. I'm not going to delay the schedule. Coming up, and Malcolm, thank you for the question, because it does allow me to talk about some of the upcoming videos. So we've got the insulation panels for the brick piers, and the blue panel is going to be where the clamp rack's going to go, and there's a build video on the clamp rack coming. I have some tools to review as well. I have a new table saw. I have and this is my big investment. I don't know if I get out of the way. Can you see it? So I have a new router table. That's components from Axminster. I'll be covering that. A quick spoiler, if you want one of those, is the fact that it wasn't plain sailing with that, and I have to say, Axminster could improve a few bits and pieces in how you kind of assemble a custom router table, as I've done, to be honest. There's plenty of advice on the website. It didn't come in the mail with the stuff. That's where we'll leave that, I think. So yeah, the router table has been a big investment this year, to be honest. I've spent a few £100s on that, and I really want to kind of do a lot more with the router in the workshop. And a bit further down the road, there's other tools. I fried my 1/2-inch router when I was trying to make the door frame, so I've replaced that with a Makita router, and that's probably going to have me revisit the guide rail once more. And question earlier, I think, regarding the guide rail, and would I recommend anyway, so guide rails have been a real feature of something that I've done lately in terms of cutting things out, making things dead accurate, and I've mounted a circular saw to the guide rail, as well as a plunge saw, which was a later purchase. I've got a guide rail adapter for a jigsaw. You might question why that's such a great idea, but actually it's really handy for deep cuts that are beyond the reach of a circular saw. And the router on the guide rail, it's much more accurate than the straight edge, and I've got two ways of doing it. A palm router that sits on a sort of spaceship style Bosch thing, which I'm not entirely sure is the best guide rail adapter, and then I've got the new Makita router and its guide rail adapter, and that's fantastic, and I really am pleased with that. And another question: what, if anything, would you change in your workshop or tools? So cover that a little bit with Keith Brown's question earlier, but this is slightly different. What would I change? The DeWalt miter saw. That's probably, so that felt like a really big purchase when I saved my money up and shelled out the thick end of £400 on a miter saw, compared to the Evolution saw I had before, which was just really under £200. And it's a great saw. The dust collection is okay. It is great for a small workshop, and that was the feature of that particular video. But it doesn't actually have a trenching cut feature on it. And that is a really safe way to make certain types of cut. And I really preferred it, looking back now, compared to perhaps nibbling away at a sort of half lap joint on a table saw, which I can now do with my new Bosch saw. But so yeah, what I perhaps should have done is saved a bit more money and gone for the Bosch or even the Festool Capex miter saw. then that would have probably felt like, you know, the end of the road for my mitre saw purchasing needs. There's really nowhere to go from a decent Bosch or a decent Festool mitre saw, so that's that. Chewy says, your Trachsel spacer is absolutely brilliant. Thank you for coming up with the idea. Actually, the idea was my dad's, but and maybe I'll cover that in a bit more detail. I've recently got, just bear with. Okay, so you saw a bit of me backside there. Sorry about that. So I've got this. This is from Rutland Tools. It's just one of those clamping straight edges. And in the video that I've got where I revisit the track saw, I was going to do a comparison between this and the track saw and the guides that I've made for the track saw rail and so on. Well, what's interesting about this really is this is no different than taking a spirit level and clamping it to a piece of plywood and cutting along it. And the idea for the track saw guides comes from a little jig that my dad made for me when he gave me my first circular saw, when I built my first circular saw. It enables you to align a straight edge to your work, the mark on your workpiece, and then cut it accurately. Anyway, so yeah, maybe we'll cover that that genesis of the idea better in that video, maybe. Right, so where are we with things? Okay. You can tell that I work in IT because my laptop's just given up the ghost. So, another question that I had, and we'll maybe make this the last question for now. If this live stream is popular, then maybe it's something I'll do a bit further on. I'm coming up to 4,000 subscribers, and I may well do a short live stream competition for that. That may work. And I may be able to even iron out some of the technical glitches associated with running this setup today. But I hope you've enjoyed this so far. Anyway, to the last question. Last question again is sort of anonymous, and is who are your favorite creators on YouTube, and what are you watching at the moment? Okay, so there are many people on YouTube that I really like and I follow almost religiously, and I watch every videos. I would say that Claire from Making Out of the Woods, she's learning wood turning, and I have a lathe coming to me. It's my father's lathe. It's currently kind of stuck at my mum's house at the moment. I can't quite get there at the minute. And I've been watching her videos as she's kind of been figuring things out as she goes along. It's been really useful. Obviously, I've mentioned Keith Brown, Rag and Bone Brown, and there's a whole bunch of kind of UK-based makers I'm watching fairly regularly. Shop, Handicraft, Leo Winstanley. His channel is doing great guns at the moment. There's people like John Clothier that I particularly like watching, although his content has been a bit sparse of late, as he's done mostly guitar build videos, which has been quite good. Crimson Custom Guitars is another channel that I like watching. I can't play a note on the guitar. My son's interested in building them. And I think as a sort of woodworking project, a handmade guitar is actually probably one of the sort of more fun projects that you can do. Who have I missed out? US makers that I particularly like. I particularly like Wesley Treat, and in particular because of his filmmaking style, I really admire that. The way he kind of gets stuck into the video without much talking. Mike Farrington, like him. Restoration Couple, like them. But then you see, then I've got so many other sort of varied interests, really. I like music. I play keyboards badly, and I like programming synthesizer sequencers and drum machines to make a half-decent tune. So Bow Beats is a particular favourite of mine. Look Mum No Computer is another music channel that I regularly dip into on a regular basis. And then there's just some more factual channels. The History Guy I like. Engineering Explained is really very good. I quite like that because of the obvious he spends an extraordinary amount of time producing a well produced educational video, and there's all sorts of props and stuff with water and stuff. I like his channel a lot, and there are many besides. So that's what I've been looking at. New stuff that I've come across recently though includes Freebird Interiors. I'm particularly interested in that. He's a commercial joiner, does fitted wardrobes a lot, and it's kind of interesting. I'm looking at that really perhaps more from the business side as to what I could potentially price anything that I make as. And that's about it. So so I've lost all of your comments, so you'll probably happily I just want to see if I can get them back up. So if I can see some more comments. Oh, I need to turn that down. Okay. See, how's the CNC going? Track saw or table saw? Actually, I much prefer the track saw, but I don't have room for an MFT table. I've even planned putting it in instead of a table saw, and there's no room. So I do most of my track saw cutting on trestle tables outside the workshop on a nice warm sunny day. So but a sort of MFT 3 style table. In fact, actually the MFT 1080 is probably my go-to thing. It's the same MFT table that Peter Millard has. That would be on my list. That would fit much better in here. So if I had one of those, then maybe I could suffer the smaller table saw a bit longer. But we'll cover why the Bosch saw is much better in my opinion in my review video, although it's not perfect by any means. Keith Brown, looking forward to the reviews of the router table and table saw. I'm late to the party, missed your answers to both, but we'll be back later. Good, as you should. Oh. There we go. That's one of my videos playing in the background suddenly on my TV. Who did that? That was probably me. I've set my TV up to play like just the logo for 30 minutes. It's a trick that I nicked off of a Peter Millard video a couple of weeks ago. It's kind of backfired a bit. So you had the white one, and there we go. There's a black one back. So that right. So I've mentioned Keith. Malcolm said thanks again. Great start to your live streaming. Well, let's call it a quits there, shall we? Everybody seems very happy in the comments, and I've had a great time filming this. I've been going an hour. God, I thought I'd just manage half an hour of your time before quitting. And anyway, you've kept me going for an hour. So there we go. Hope you found this really useful. Hope you found it interesting, really, for me to reflect on some of your questions. I've enjoyed answering them and sharing a little bit more about me and my workshop. But for now, as I've become accustomed to saying at the end of my videos, from the Strawbyte Workshop, for now, cheerio. And replay if you're late to the party. Keith, take care.